All right, it is day 2 of free agency. The Krug Show up and rolling. Let's go. Off and rolling on the Krug Show. Happy March 10th. It is Tuesday. Welcome to the Krug Show, brought to you by Pickin' a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California is Pickin' a Pickle. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Pickin' a Pickle. Check them out in Corte Madera. Check them out in Emeryville. Soon to open in Petaluma. Go get some brisket chili. Tell them that Krug sent you. And, of course, thanks to our spring training sponsors as well. Alomar Marina. Thank you, Alomar Marina, Sacramento's favorite riverfront dining with a view. Voted best lunch spot in Sacramento. How about dining while you float on the Sacramento River? I know it sounds great. Alomar Marina, voted Sacramento's favorite 14 times over. Check them out, alomarmarina.net on the web, 5999 Garden Highway. A bunch of my friends have headed up there and gone to lunch there and said that they love it. So Wednesday through Saturday, they're open 11 to 7, Sunday 9 to 4. You can drive up on your boat, dock it, have some shrimp tacos, and float as you dine. And then, of course, thanks to Novato Chevrolet, go meet my guy, David Corral. He's the man to go see. He will get you a screaming deal. Tell him that Krug sent you. Thanks to Novato Chevrolet and the owner of Novato Chevrolet, Gus, for sponsoring the Krug Show. Once again, David Corral, go see him. He will give you an incredible deal. Just tell them that you know me, Larry Kruger, and that you're a fan of the Krug Show. All right, we're off and running on a Monday, or on a Tuesday, I should say, and a lot going on. The 49ers, of course, yesterday announced that they are giving Mike Evans, it was first announced as a 3-year deal worth $60.4 million. It's actually looking more like a 2-year deal, but it's going to be worth $42.4 million with $16.3 million guaranteed. That's how it pans out. There are incentives that he could earn even more than that. So the Niners are paying Mike Evans, heck, $10 million per year, less per year than they would have paid Brandon Ayuk. I mean, think about that. The Ayuk void created the room that Evans walked into. And, Evans is a better player. He's got championship pedigree. He's a future Hall of Famer. I think he's more of a pro in the locker room. So he should be a great influence on the young wide receivers like Jordan Watkins and Jacob Cowing, and if he's here, Ricky Pearsall. So I like it. I would have loved a younger receiver, and I'm a little concerned about, his down year last year, but it was a clavicle and a concussion. If it had been hamstring injuries and quad injuries all the year, it would have been one thing, but that is a concern. Older players tend to get hurt, and are they going to pay this guy all this money, and then they're just going to wind up with 3 or 4 good games, and then all of a sudden, he's out 7 weeks. So we're going to find out. But as far as if you just said Brandon Ayuk coming off the knee injury, or you could have Mike Evans coming off his clavicle and his concussion, I would rather have Mike Evans coming off of what he's coming off of, because I saw that injury that Ayuk suffered, and it looked devastating. And we'll see if he's anything close to the player that he was. So that was the first signing yesterday. The second signing is the Niners signed Varian Low to a 2-year deal, $9.25 million, 2.76 signing bonus, 2.61 option bonus, salaries of $1.3 million, which is guaranteed. In the first year, $1.7 million, and then $20,000 per game bonuses, $100,000 workout bonus annually, $1.5 million playtime incentives, $1.25 million playtime incentives for 27, 28 and 29, 30 and 31 are voidable years. So, basically they paid him swing tackle money. I mean, if you're trying to look for what exactly, trying to make sense of the Varian Low signing, um, it's it's only 4.6 million APY base, and it could be worth $6 million if he makes all of his makeable incentives. So this was not like left tackle money. They paid him swing tackle money. And it just seems like maybe a little leverage in the Trent Williams talks, maybe a little pivot point. Personally, we'll talk a little bit about Trent Williams, but that's probably going to get decided today or tomorrow, I would imagine, pretty soon. Do the Niners trade Trent Williams? Do they cut Trent Williams? They're not going to pay Trent Williams close to $39 million on the cap. That's not going to happen. So they can either cut him or they can trade him, and there's a negative dead cap associated with both. And then, I've seen some people like, Coach Yak's like, well, yeah, trade him for a second-round pick. Yeah, if they could get a second-round pick, they would have already traded him. That much is guaranteed. I don't think they're going to get a second-round pick. I think probably kind of what I threw out the other day is probably more like it. So they got Varian Low, they have Pleasance, and they have McKivitz. So technically they have 3 other tackles. Most teams carry 3 tackles. So they could be, good to go. But there's also the draft coming up. There's also free agency. Taylor Decker is out there if they wanted to go with the big, the high-priced item behind Trent Williams as a replacement. But, I mean, what I suggested the other day, I think, is more in line with how it's structured right now. It's like if they could somehow trade Trent Williams to a Houston who, a team like the Texans who are desperate to protect C.J. Stroud and kind of prove that C.J. Stroud is what they think he is and not what he looked like in the playoffs. They have Ariante Ursary, who's a second, going into a second year now at offensive tackle, and he's not a star. But if you could get an Ursary and a day 3 pick, I'm doing that all day, every day, because there's cap savings associated with this, and you're getting younger, and you're getting a pick. The idea that they could get a second-round pick, wow, that seems like pie in the sky. Why the Cowboys or the Packers didn't get a second-round pick from the Cowboys for Rashawn Gary? They got a low-round pick. So I would think that if you're sitting there going, oh, well, maybe they'll trade him for a second-round pick, I think you're going to be disappointed. Maybe I'm going to be pleasantly surprised. Maybe I'm the one who's going to be surprised. I won't be disappointed if the Niners get a second-round pick for Trent Williams, but I will be surprised. My guess is the going rate for these guys would be a 6th-round pick. Trent might be in a special category, which would make it like a 2nd-round pick. I think they've settled in the middle. My guess is it's like Ariante Ursary and a 4th-round pick. And if you could get that trade, do it. Do it. Get down the road. Trent's a great player, but he's getting older, more and more costly. You need to find a young replacement. You need to start building this line, rebuilding this line. And a guy like Ursary, who's a wide-bodied, tackle, I think would be a great replacement for Trent. And then if you could get a replacement for Trent for cheap, I think you're ahead of the game. And then any pick you get would be gravy. My guess is like Ariante Ursary in a 4th or a 5th. That would be my guess. If it's a different team, maybe it's another backup lineman in a 4th, something like that. If you can get I think that's kind of what they're looking at. I think it's pie in the sky to think you're getting a 2nd-round pick for Trent Williams right now. Couple other notes. Dre Greenlaw was released by the Broncos, and there's a lot of people saying, hey, Dre could come back to the Niners. In fact, there was a report that said if the Niners could get Greenlaw, who's 28 years old, to come back, that they may entertain the idea of trading Fred Warner, which I find hard to believe. I'm a Greenlaw fan. He was drafted by the Niners in 2019. He spent 6 seasons here. He's a warrior, but his body is breaking down, and I just don't think they can go back to him. I mean, if they did, you would have to have all kinds of, depth there. anticipating an injury. I just don't know. I mean, I love Dre Greenlaw, and I think he would be a great guy to have in the room, and he plays with his hair on fire when he plays the 3 games he's going to play or 4 games. But then the injuries mount, and then it's a cap concern, and it's just, So I would probably say no, don't go in that direction. And I really don't like the idea of trading Fred Warner. But there have been reports in the last 24 hours that the Niners have been receiving calls about Fred Warner and that John Harbaugh's New York Giants are one of the teams making those calls. The girl on NFL Network who's embedded with the Cowboys said that the Cowboys, she threw out the name Fred Warner to the Cowboys. The Cowboys said no. I got to think that the answer is no because Fred's not available, not because Dallas didn't want him. But I do find it interesting that the Niners are getting calls on Fred Warner. And when you're talking about maybe moving off of Trent Williams, that makes you wonder, are they in a sell mode? Would they consider moving off of other parts of their core? Something to watch for sure. The Cardinals signed Kendrick Bourne, 2 years, $12 million deal. He's obviously got a relationship with Mike LaFleur, $6 million a year for Bourne to go to Arizona. I mean, you know what? As I said, there's only room for one slow receiver, and I think that slow receiver is going to be Deebo. And it's funny, nobody's really talking about this, but Lynch referenced it, Kittle referenced it. And I think JJ's moving on, and I think Bourne is moving on. And now you have Mike Evans. So you have your kind of possession guy, and maybe if you add Deebo, you have your kind of your gadget play guy near the line of scrimmage, and then you're like one receiver away from a complete group with that guy, the next guy being the guy who's more of a downfield threat, a little bit more of a vertical threat. Doesn't have to be a speedster per se, because you do have some other speed, but it should be somebody who scares somebody in how they run. That should be first and foremost. There was talk the other day about the Niners kicking tires on a Jaylen Carter trade, and somebody threw out, would you make this deal? Would you trade the 2026 first-round pick overall, 27th? Would you trade next year's second-round pick and Renardo Green for Jaylen Carter? That's a little rich. I think I would definitely do the 2026 first and Renardo Green. I also would definitely do the 2026 first and a 2027 second if you took Renardo Green out. But I'm not giving them a first, a second, and Renardo Green for a player in Carter that does come with some off-field risk. But he is special. And, if the Niners really do want to have a really great front, this is the deal they probably need to make, because what's the odds that they're going to be able to find the one or two dominant defensive linemen that exist in this upcoming draft? I mean, there's a lot of D linemen I really love. Caden McDonald from Ohio State, Zion Young from Missouri. There's a bunch of guys that I really like, both tackle and defensive end. But, Jaylen Carter is Jaylen Carter. He's an all-pro interior guy. And the bottom line is I think the Niners defensive front is it's too many nice guys. You got to have somebody there who's tough, really, really tough. And it's like you got Alfred Collins, you got CJ West inside. Carter would be the ideal third guy in that trio. You got West, who's a little bit of a run player, a little bit of a pass rusher. You got Collins, who's really much more of a run player. And then you got Carter, who's really a great pass rusher and has amazing movement ability. And so I'd do it. I would do it. Now, I threw out, would you trade for Jaylen Carter and give up Nick Bosa? And the reason I threw that out is because the rumor last week was that the Raiders were going to trade for Jaylen Carter for Max Crosby, that the Cowboys wanted Max Crosby, or that the Eagles wanted Max Crosby for Jaylen Carter. And if you wanted Max Crosby, then it's easy to say, well, why don't we pivot to signing Trey Hendrickson, or which they may do, or trading for Nick Bosa, which that's why, if you're going to trade for somebody like Nick Bosa, you better be coming with somebody like a Jaylen Carter. Would you go Jaylen Carter straight up for Nick Bosa? Carter's had problems off the field, but he's 24 and healthy. Bosa is as good as almost anybody at his position, but he's 28 going on 29, and he's had 3 ACL injuries. It's a tough call, isn't it? Then there's the Renardo Green factor, where it sounds like the Niners really want to trade him because he doesn't fit their locker room, which would be, it's another busted pick because you took him high up in the draft, and now you're trading him. You're going to trade him, really. So you better, to me, if you could get Jaylen Carter for a first-round pick in Renardo Green, I would do it, because Lynch's stated goal is we got to get better on the defensive front. Well, if you got to get better on the defensive front and you're going to take a D lineman, tackle, or end at 27, wouldn't you rather take Jaylen Carter? And if Renardo Green's kind of a sunk cost at this point that you're trying to separate from, that's not that much extra, a first-round pick in Renardo Green for Jaylen Carter. And then you'd have Bosa and Carter on your front. Would the Eagles do that trade? I don't know. I will say this. If you look at the Eagles depth chart, they have 5 defensive ends that are all free agents. So they need defensive ends, and they have a bunch of depth at defensive tackle with Byron Young and Ty Robinson. And, they just got guys. They just signed Jordan Davis to a big-time extension. So, and that's the other thing. They can't really afford to pay Jordan Davis and Jaylen Carter north of $60 million combined in a cap sport for 2 defensive tackles. So then you mix in the fact that Carter's been, maybe a little bit of a character concern, which then you'd say, well, Krug, if he's a character concern, why do the Niners want him? Well, the Niners need a pass rush. They have no pass rush, and this guy represents a ton of pass rush. So, yeah, it would be a little bit of a dance with the devil to bring in Jaylen Carter, but I would do it. I mean, you've got a front line that needs to put heat on Sam Darnold. You need to be a whole lot better on the defensive line than you were this year if you're going to win the Super Bowl in the next year or two. And is that player that's going to make you way better in the draft? Is that player in free agency? I don't know. But Jaylen Carter is an all-pro defensive tackle who's 24 years old. So, yes, John Lynch played with Warren Sapp. He's played with some guys who, weren't necessarily choir boys, but, man, they could play. And he's got a Super Bowl ring on his finger because of guys like Warren Sapp. So, is he really going to sit there and go, no, Jaylen Carter, too rough for us? Really? You were teammates with Warren Sapp and Simeon Rice. And now Jaylen Carter is too hot to handle? The organization that won Super Bowls with Charles Haley can't handle Jaylen Carter? This kind of goes right back to what Dante Whitner was talking about, where he was like, hey, you know what? The Niners have too many nice guys, and they got to get some nasty. Well, this is exactly what he's talking about. This is exactly the kind of player that he's talking about. Badass player who absolutely can play, but runs a little hot, and is going to have to be, coached up, and he's going to have to be monitored, and they're going to have to, it's not like it's just, it's not like he's going to come here and just all of a sudden be Eric Armstead, Walter Payton Man of the Year. No, not necessarily. But I would do it. Because that's how good Jaylen Carter is. Would you? That's the question. Couple other notes. There's more than that today. Caden Ellis likely makes a lot of sense for the Niners at linebacker. Maybe even more sense than Dre Greenlaw. A lot of talk that Caden Ellis, who played for Raheem Morris in Atlanta, could follow Morris to the Niners. He's a good situational backer who can put a little heat on the quarterback. He's young, obviously younger and healthier than Greenlaw. Adam Schefter said yesterday it looks like the Niners will be losing Jawan Jennings. I would not say that's a fait accompli. Well, let's see where his market goes. I know Shanahan loves him. I know Lynch loves him. If his market really bottoms out and there's no market for him, I know there's a lot of talk saying, oh, he'll save face if he goes and plays somewhere else. And that's probably true. But this is the only home he's ever known in the NFL. And I think if all things are equal, I think he'd like to return. That would be my guess. And I think the Niners would like to have him back, all things being equal. I don't know that he fits, though. He may be kind of redundant now with Evans, and he may be too expensive with Evans. So Jennings is likely gone. But the Niners need another receiver. Are they still after Romeo Doubs? He's still out there. Are they going to hold off to the draft? That to me, the next move they make at receiver is going to be really interesting to watch. I'm on record as saying I think John Lynch has already stated to us that Deebo's coming back. So, if you add Deebo to this mix, then the last receiver's got to be a young guy who can run. I would think. So we shall see. Niners, once again, open to trading Trent Williams. Ian Rappaport says Williams is frustrated with the current negotiating process. There are not a lot of options if the Niners are looking for a replacement in free agency. Taylor Decker was recently released. He's probably near or at the top of the list. But outside of that, man, there really is not a starting offensive tackle out there that I can see. So Trent Williams has a lot of leverage here. There's a lot of leverage. And the question is, how eager are the Niners to turn the page? I think the Niners don't want to have another mountain of dead cap. So I think they've already decided internally they're not going to renegotiate Trent. And so I think the Niners are probably open to a trade. Now it's just a matter of they don't want to get taken. So now it's a matter of what can they get in return for Trent. And as I said, Ariante Ursary and a fifth makes sense. A second would be highway robbery. Absolutely highway robbery. Our friend Brad Graham threw out a suggestion yesterday that he thinks the Niners ought to trade the 58th pick. So I guess that would be their round 2 pick and 127, which is one of the picks they have in the 4th, I believe. To Jacksonville for Brian Thomas Jr. I agree with this. I think Brian Thomas Jr. is the receiver the Niners need. If you got Brian Thomas Jr. with Mike Evans, now you got 2 big receivers that you added for Brock Purdy who can really play. One who's headed to the Hall of Fame in Evans, who's a veteran, and one who's just getting his career going in Brian Thomas Jr. But, I mean, this is the kind of stature and the kind of receiver that I think they need. He doesn't have off-the-field problems like Jordan Addison. He's not going to cost – he's still on a rookie contract, so he's very reasonably cost that way. He's going to cost you a couple draft picks, maybe a player and a couple draft picks. Would you trade Ricky Pearsall for him? If the Niners could get Brian Thomas Jr. for Ricky Pearsall and a pick, would you make that trade? To me, I would. That's the trade I would make. And I think Brian Thomas, Ricky Pearsall's been solid. He just can't stay healthy. Brian Thomas, I think, is a little bit better football player when you factor in all things. Durability is a big part of the game. That's a big part of it. And you got to factor in that durability. And when you factor in the durability aspect of it, I think he's better. I think he's better than Ricky. And it might just be one of those change of scenery deals where everybody sometimes needs a change of scenery. That's just kind of the way it is. Vic Tafer is reporting this morning the Niners reportedly have interest in bringing back Brian Robinson Jr. That's interesting. He didn't play at all. They never used him. I actually think he's a pretty good player. I know there were people who were like, he's no Jordan Mason. I don't know, man. Jordan Mason had his own issues. I think this guy was a little bit more dependable personality than Jordan Mason. little bit more mature. But I'm okay with Brian Robinson coming back. I like Brian Robinson. I don't think they utilized him nearly as much as they could have, should have, and need to. Now, I would love to see them add another back, even if they had Brian Robinson. Like, give me Kalon Black out of Indiana in the draft. Give me Kajon Owens of Florida International in the draft. Give me one more back who's really dynamic in the draft. But I could be happy with CMC, Juice, Jordan James, Brian Robinson. Garendo, you got to move on from. He's a 0. I mean, just can't play. Just can't play. He's not a football player. He's an athlete. If you can find a trade partner for him, that would do it. And then one more back. You know, Kalon Black from Indiana would be my choice because I just love how hard he runs. I love the intensity that he brings to the table. I love the leadership and the toughness. Kalon Black was one of my favorites. Kajon Owens from Florida International is also really underrated. Very fast, very explosive, really dynamic athlete. But there's a bunch of guys. There's a bunch of backs for sure. You know, Jam Miller from Alabama. I know Alabama had a disastrous year running the ball, but I really am a big fan of Jam Miller, who runs really well and is 220 pounds. So there's a bunch of backs, and there's a bunch of good backs in the draft. But if you got Brian Robinson back, and, you know, you're kind of set there. And if you're, you know, are they going to move Mac Jones? Doesn't look like it. I was looking at the list. So the Raiders are going Fernando Mendoza, but maybe the Raiders don't want to start Fernando Mendoza. So possibly Mac could be an option for them. But realistically, are they going to give you after picking Mendoza 1, are they going to give you a good deal for Mac? Probably not. What would you want from the Raiders? I'd probably want Michael Mayer and a day 2 pick. You know, Michael Mayer and a day 2 pick. I think that's a fair ask for Mac Jones. So Vegas, even though they're going with Mendoza, they're still a possibility. The Colts have Daniel Jones, but he's got the Achilles thing. But I don't think Mac Jones is a possibility there because Daniel Jones is making so much. Atlanta went with Tua Tagovailoa. So Atlanta's off the board. I thought Atlanta would have been a really good option for Mac Jones. Instead, they're going with Tua, which is unbelievably stupid. Why? Because Tua can't read coverage. I think Tua is really not very good. So I think that's a bad decision by Atlanta. But we'll see. Time will tell. Then you got Arizona. Arizona's wide open, right? They're talking about Jimmy Garoppolo. Yesterday, they signed Gardner Minshew. They have Jacoby Brissett. Is Clayton Tune still there? I'm not sure who else is there. But that could be a home for Mac Jones. But I don't know if I could see Arizona, you know, pulling the trigger on sending real compensation to the Niners. And they sound eager to or willing to go with either Garoppolo, Minshew, or Brissett. Miami signed Malik Willis. I thought Miami would have been a good home for Mac Jones. Nope. Pittsburgh appears to be going back to Aaron Rodgers. Would they have interest in Mac Jones? Maybe. Minnesota looks like they're centering on Kyler Murray. Would they have Mac Jones? Only if they lose out on Murray. Cleveland's going with Shedeur Sanders. So that's it, except for the Jets. And the Jets, I don't know what the Jets are going to do. There's Kirk Cousins. There's Geno Smith. There's Carson Wentz. Or there's Mac Jones. You know, would you trade Mac Jones to the Jets? The Jets have, I think, 3 picks in the second round, something like that. They got a lot of pieces that, you know, would be nice. Will McDonald IV is a nice edge rusher. I'd take Will McDonald IV and a 3rd-round pick for Mac Jones. Send him there. So the Mac Jones very well could be back. Dieter could be absolutely right. Dieter said it about a month ago. He said Mac Jones is not going anywhere. He said there's not going to be a home for Mac Jones, that he's going to stay with the Niners. And right now, I would say it's down to he's going to be a placeholder for the Raiders until Mendoza's ready to play. That seems unlikely. He's going to go to Arizona, which the Niners are going to trade Mac Jones in the division. That seems unlikely. And Arizona's talking about Garoppolo and Minshew and Brissett, and they got to, that seems unlikely. The Jets would not be where, if I was Mac Jones, I think I'd rather stay with the Niners. But the Jets, I guess, would be the one team that's kind of not spoken for yet. Miami's going Willis. Pittsburgh's got Rodgers. Minnesota's going to go with Kyler. Browns are going to go with Shador. So there you go. Niners are probably going to wind up keeping Mac Jones, and he's going to be the guy who is available if somebody loses a quarterback this summer. And then you're looking at 27 draft compensation for Mac Jones. It's not the worst thing because the 49ers have a great backup quarterback. I mean, they have insurance on their season. They can win with Jones. They can win with Purdy. In a way, if you're Shanahan, if you're looking for insurance that says that you're going to be a 10-win team and go back to the playoffs, it's probably it right there. Bringing back Mac Jones. So that one's interesting. As far as, by the way, yesterday and day one of free agency, who spent the most yesterday? Tennessee. Tennessee spent $270 million yesterday. The Raiders spent $194 million. The surprise spender was Adam Peters in Washington. Washington spent $147 million. Colts spent $133 million. Giants spent $127 million. So, wow. That's some aggressive spending on day one of free agency for sure. For sure. Another note here. Actually, we'll play this. This is Baldi reacting. This is Baldi reacting to the Mike Evans signing. We'll hear what Baldi had to say, and then we'll talk about the next topic here. Here it is.
Okay. So the 49ers just signed Mike Evans. He's ageless. Here he is against Darryl Stingley Jr., every number one corner. He's been seeing him for most of 12 years, week in, week out. And all he does is beat him. It doesn't matter who he's going up against. Like you could say, okay, you go to play Atlanta. You got A.J. Terrell out there. All right, A.J. Terrell, here you go. Back shoulder. How are you going to stop it? Like nobody can stop it. Like his length, his reach, his timing. And then when you get to the red zone, Mike Evans is a finisher. He scored 108 touchdowns so far in the regular season. Doesn't matter what you do to him. You got to give him a shot because he's just going to use his body. It's slow post basketball. It's his size. It's his reach. It's his first step quickness. Mike Evans is going to finish drives for you. He's not going to stop. Taking it to the Bay Area.
The one thing that I noticed about those highlights is there's no separation at all. Mike Evans is not a separator at this point. He's a guy that's got great ball skills. He's going to, you throw it up to him in a crowd. He's going to come down with it. He's a 3 flies up champion at this point, right? He's going to come down with it. He's very competitive at the catch point. But if you're looking for separation, it's not there. So Brock Purdy's accuracy is going to be, tested here. He's going to have to put the ball on his hands because there's not going to be tons of separation there between Evans and the DB. You saw it right there. Now, one other note here, and I don't know if this is, I'm tempted to not share the screen on this, but I'll do it anyway. This is the NFL Rumors account. Now, I don't know how much credence there is in this account because I've seen just a lot of rumors that don't happen connected to this. But NFL Rumors put this out yesterday. The Niners and the Packers have been in contact with Seahawks free agent corner Tariq Woolen. Now, to me, this is the guy to go get, Tariq Woolen. I think Woolen is the guy to go get. One, you need a corner. You need a big corner. He's a terrific player, and you can take him away from Seattle. So, that's something to watch for. The other thing to watch for today is, are the Niners going to get busy on the defensive line front? Trey Hendrickson. The Titans are interested in Trey Hendrickson. And Hendrickson is a free agent, and he's holding firm on his asking price. Yesterday, we saw Jalen Phillips sign, Adafe Owe signed, Boye Mafe signed, Kwity Paye. They all got lucrative deals. And Hendrickson's more accomplished than all of them, and yet he's still on the market. And so he's going to want big money. He's going to want big money. No question about that. So it's really as simple as that. Are the Niners going to be interested in him? Well, they're interested, but can they swim in those waters? Do they have that kind of money to throw at a defensive end? Are the Niners done with wide receiver? That's the other interesting thing. Also, yesterday, the 49ers were given 3 compensatory selections. So they have 4 picks now in the 4th round. The Niners pick number 133, number 138, number 139. Those are the 3 extra compensatory picks that they were given because of the whole draft compensatory formula. Sounds like the Niners made a play for John Franklin Myers before he went to Tennessee. The real interesting thing is, that sounds like the Chiefs are just waiting for the Niners to release Trent Williams. And I get the sense that despite the fact that Williams is 37, he's got a $38.8 million cap number for this year. And that we saw them resolve a contract issue, the Niners and Trent, in 2024. But you heard Matt Mayoko say yesterday, he thinks this time the vibes feel a little different. And, we'll see. I mean, Kansas City cut Jawan Williams. They drafted Josh Simmons 32nd overall in the draft, and he's always had some injury problems. But, yeah, what's going to happen with Trent Williams? That's a big story today. What's going to happen on the 49er defensive line? I think that's a big story today. Do the Niners get involved in the linebacker market at all? They're really naked at linebacker. Do they make a play for Deebo or Dre Greenlaw to bring those guys back? There's a lot of rumor about that. And do they make that play on the corner? They brought in Raheem Morris to be the defensive coordinator, and there's a lot of talk they want to trade Renardo Green. We're getting right down to it. I would say if Renardo Green is going to be traded, today would be probably the day, or definitely in the next day or two. And if you're going to trade Renardo Green, then that means that corner becomes a real priority. Seattle had 3 key guys from their secondary all hit the marketplace. Tariq Woolen, Kobe Bryant, and Josh Jobe. And they re-signed Jobe. They let Bryant walk away. And now they're waiting on Tariq Woolen. So supposedly the Niners are in the mix. So they used a day 2 pick at corner in the 2024 draft on Renardo Green. They used another day 2 pick on a corner in the 25 draft. They got Upton Stout. They signed Diamador Lenore long-term. Pro Football Focus graded out Renardo Green 86th among qualified corners last season. The Niners gave Green a 92% defensive snap share alongside Lenore, so he was the full-time guy. And they gave Lenore a 5-year, $89.8 million extension in 2024. So Lenore is owed $16.7 guaranteed in this upcoming year, and or on April 1st he gets that. So the Niners have to make a decision. That they're not going to get rid of Lenore, I don't think, but I think there's a good chance that they go for a corner. And there's talk about Tariq Woolen. I think he would be the priority, but there's also talk about Montaric Brown, and he's a Jaguar corner. The Jags have interest in re-signing him. He played at Arkansas. He's kind of a zone corner. He was a 7th round pick, and he started 22 games for the Jaguars the last couple of years. So he's not a great runner. He doesn't have tons of speed. He's a little bit susceptible to the deep ball down the field, but he's a good tackler. He's an experienced zone corner. And if they don't land Tariq Woolen, I could see them going Monteric Brown today. So just something to look for is, what's happening with Romeo Doubs? I don't know. Does the Evans signing now preclude Doubs from being a Niner? I don't know. Did Dobbs's market just kind of evaporate in the midst of thin air? There may be a little something to that as well. I really thought he was going to have a burgeoning market. It made it seem. We got this guy, Andrew. Larry has lost his fastball. Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate that. That is awesome. Let's hit a couple supers here. We've got this one from Dwayne, who's become a YouTube member. We always give a little clap for our brand new YouTube members. Welcome aboard, Dwayne. We have this one from Buster, who says, tired of Trent's act, enough holding us hostage. I don't know if it's an act, but you know what? I'm tired of every year. It's like more and more, this guy needs special treatment. He's got 3 lockers. He doesn't practice on Wednesdays. He's a great player, but I mean, I kind of agree. Enough is enough. They paid him a lot of money. He's made $200 million, if not more, in his career. He could definitely give them some kind of a discount. Is he going to? No. And I'm not saying he owes them a discount, but he could definitely give them a discount. He's made a ton of money. He could show that he's all about winning by taking less to stay with them. But he's not going to do that. He looks at it as a business, and he's a mercenary. He'll play here, he'll play there, he'll play in Kansas City. He doesn't care. He'll play wherever he can get the money. So, he wants his $20 million or whatever his minimum is for playing this year, and he's not going to take a penny less. And if you're the 49ers, you got a player who doesn't practice on Wednesdays, who, probably isn't going to play a full year, is going to cost more and more and more as time goes on, and is going to, he's going to cost more and deliver less as time goes on. That's just the way it is. It's not about Trent, or it's not personal. It's just older players get paid more and they contribute less. So do you want to it's really as simple as this. The Niners had $100 million of dead cap last year. Do you want another year coming up in the future where you have, $50 to $100 million of dead cap? If you do, then sign Trent to a market level extension. Don't have him take any less money. And then when he retires, you're going to wind up paying him that dead cap money is going to be on there for another couple of years. If you want that, then extend him. If you don't want that, then cut him and absorb whatever penalty there is right now. And if you want it, something tells me they don't want to do that either. They would like to trade him. But then the question is, there's a cap hit involved there. And then do you want to absorb that? And then also, in addition to that, what's your price tag? What are you looking for? Are you just looking for anything, or are you looking for a second-round pick? A second-round pick for a 38-year-old player, I don't care who it is an awfully high price. The Niners once upon a time got a number 1 pick from the Kansas City Chiefs for Joe Montana, but it was Joe Montana. He was a quarterback, and it was 1993. He was a product of the 79 draft, and it was 1993, and the Niners still traded him for a first-round pick. But that was a quarterback. Now, this is the next most valuable piece on the board is the left tackle. So I don't know that he's going to bring you a first, like Joe did, and I would almost guarantee you he's not. I'd almost guarantee you he's not even going to bring you a second. But if you could get a player and a day 3 pick, would that be enough to satisfy the 49ers to get down the road? My guess is yes. And I think we'll see that probably in the next day. That would be my guess. Bradley Brown in the house. Our entire team vibe is soft. Teams aren't scared to run on us on 4th and 1. On offense, we can't and don't run the ball on 4th and 1. It's like, come on. Yeah, Bradley, I'm totally with you on this. The 49ers have gotten to this soft area. They don't even try. They get to a 3rd and long. It's halfback draw and punt. They don't even try to have Brock Purdy throw it down the field. They get to 3rd and 1. Do they try to run it behind Brendel in the A gap behind Pooney and Brendel and Burford? Nope. Can't. Don't even bother trying. Shanahan knows it's not going to be successful. So he runs wide on the fastest defense in football with the fullback on a slow development. It was just that play. I mean, come on, man. That play was just the worst play of the Shanahan era. You ran a quarterback read option pitched from your fullback back deeper behind the line of scrimmage to the short side of the field to McCaffrey. He pitched it to him while he was almost out of bounds. And that was as bad a play as you're ever going to see. Unfortunately, it was in the playoffs on 4th and 1. And Shanahan was pissed because McDonald pulled this high school Harry move and called a late timeout. Yeah, okay. That was high school Harry. But so what? You had no play that you could run on 4th and 1. Can't tell me Brendel and Pooney and Burford are great and then run wide on 4th and 1. You ran wide because you couldn't run up the middle. The fastest area between 2 points is a straight line. Did you run a straight line? No. You ran wide. So I agree with this guy wholeheartedly. Teams gear up to run it on the Niners. Their short yardage run game, their goal line run defense sucks. They don't have that guy who can just anchor inside. Who's their anchor against the run? Kalia Davis? No. Jordan Elliott? No. Maybe Collins and West can be those anchors in the future. But right now, when was the last time the Niners, consistently had a game where they operated in the backfield, where they're getting tackles for loss and sacks and they're living in the backfield? It hasn't happened. I agree. The entire vibe is soft. You can't run it. You can't stop the run. You're not very physical. Your center is a finesse 285-pound guy who you think is great, but can't move anybody in the run game. Your interior offensive line gets pushed around at will. Your best offensive lineman is about to be an ex-player. You don't have those big behemoth defensive tackles that just say no. Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy. You're not running in here. Niners don't have that. Don't have the linebacking core to make plays in the backfield. So yeah, I agree. That's why I was like, hey, yeah, go get Jaylen Carter, because I agree with Bradley Brown here. The entire vibe of the 49ers is soft. They're soft against the run. They're soft running the ball. Their power back is Christian McCaffrey. Really? Their power back is Brian Robinson. Really? They didn't run him when they had, short yardage. They don't move people on the O-line. Their O-line doesn't move people. Their D-line doesn't stuff the run. Yeah, I agree. They used to have Greenlaw, Aziz, and Fred. Now they have guys like D. Winters. Come on, man. There's no question. They need some JYD. They need some junkyard dogs. They need some road graders on offense and a badass back. They need a big bulldozing tight end. They need a defensive tackle that absolutely cannot be uprooted out of there. They need a defensive lineman or two that just plays with their hair on fire. They need a linebacker who's just going to sprint into that hole at full throttle and try to blow it up. They don't have any of those pieces. So I agree. I totally agree. This is the best $4.99 quote comment of the day. Their entire team vibe is soft. Totally agree. Totally agree. Comment of the day. San Fran 4966. What do you think of Greenlaw back to San Francisco? No. I mean, I just said they're soft, and here's a badass guy, but you know what? He's too beat up. It's not money well spent. I mean, you can get him at the minimum. If he's willing to come back for nothing, yeah, do it. If he's willing to come back for the minimum, yeah, because he's a tone-setting, violent player that will demand that other guys play violent. If you have to give him any kind of guaranteed money, hell no. No. So if he's free, I'll take him. If not, no. Jacob Andrews says, you've said jump to the NFL is hard for wide receivers. Can you rank positions by how big the jump is to the NFL? The D is about youth and speed, but the NFL often is very different from college football. The positions that I think are easier, I mean, there's no easy positions. You know, the level of complexity of an NFL game plan on either side of the ball or on special teams is quite a bit more intricate, quite a bit more detailed than anything you're going to have at the college level on either side of the ball, offense, defense, special teams. So it's all more complicated. It's all more complicated. But as far as, in college, it's like the receiver stands at his position and he looks over to the sideline and somebody holds up this. And it's like, hey, you're running the purple. All right. I'm running the purple. And then it's got a whole route tree associated with it and it has all kinds of meaning. And it's just like that simple. In the NFL, the receiver position is about so much more. You know, you're going to run this route against this coverage at this depth and with this, approach at the break point. And if you get a different look, you're going to run it a different route at a different depth with a different, and these things all have to be decided on the fly. I mean, it's just so much more involved. As far as what positions are not as involved, well, I mean, in the wide nine, I think it's a pretty simple get up the field, burn the edge, get to the quarterback. I think the whether you can do it or not is complicated, but what you have to do is very basic. So I would say in the Niners scheme, like the wide nine defensive end spots, maybe are a little bit less thinking. Like maybe you could sign on a Wednesday and play on a Sunday. But yeah, and it's usually the edge spots where you don't have as much thinking, but you never know. It's all more complicated. The offensive line's more complicated than it is in college. The D line's more complicated. The linebacking core is more complicated. I would say if you're a great man cover corner, the adjustment is not as great, but you're still dealing with the greatest receiver you've covered in college, on every single snap, on every single Sunday. That's then you got the challenges of the physical, you get the mental challenges, then you have the physical challenges. And the physical challenges are as big, if not bigger than the mental challenges. I hope I answered that. Joseph Ernberg says Seattle's defense is going to bully Mike Evans in our oldies. Yeah, I mean, the one thing about Mike Evans is not getting tons of separation. Brock Purdy's going to have to put it right on him. Right on him. He's not going to get tons of separation. They're going to be glued right to him. But he has great ball skills and he can make some plays. The Bucks, by the way, have signed Anzalone, the Lions linebacker, goes to Tampa. $17 million deal. Wow. We get this one, B. Kirsch. Any shot they do 1 year with Trent like the Texans did with some of their guys, regardless, need to find the next up, be it the draft or in free agency. Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, Danielle Hunter signed a 1 year deal for $40 million, and maybe they'll do something like that, and just pay as you go kind of a thing. But I don't think the Niners. I think the Niners are looking for a haircut. I think they're looking for a discount. I don't think they're looking to pay him that kind of money. I really just don't. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting concept. I don't think they're going to pay him that kind of money. I really don't. We've got this one from David Esger. Their entire team vibe is really soft. Yeah, I kind of agree. You need some badass dudes. You need a couple badass offensive linemen. You need a physical running back. You need a big run after the catch. This kid Cameron for Baylor would be nice. Big run after the catch. A physical wide receiver who can deal out some punishment. And you got to improve your front seven. And you got to have a big, dominant man-to-man corner. That's where Tariq Woolen would be nice. Tariq Woolen at 6'4" and change with his 4.26 speed and his crazy long arms. If you put Tariq Woolen in the Niners secondary, that would help them quite a bit. There was talk they wanted James Pierre. He signed 2 years, $8.5 million with Minnesota, the former Pittsburgh Steeler. But that was an indication right there that, Raheem Morris is looking for another body at corner. And now that we have a pretty good indication that they want to move Renardo Green, then that also becomes another kind of interesting spot, that makes the corner all the more, the need for the corner is all the more, prevalent now. God, I keep seeing these stories about the Niners trading Fred Warner to the New York Giants. I can't imagine that that's going to happen. I just can't. I know I've seen it a bunch, but I just can't imagine the Niners are doing that. But I've seen a lot of rumors now. Who knows? Those could be rumors that are emanating from New York, and we know Fred's a big time guy. So I'm sure they'd love to have Fred. By the way, the odds to win the NFC West after day one of free agency, the Rams are plus 145, Seahawks are plus 165, the Niners are plus 250, Cardinals are plus 7,500. Wow. So 14.5 to 1 on the Rams to win the division, 16.5 to 1 on the Seahawks to win the division, 25 to 1 on the Niners to win the division, and 750 to 1 on Arizona. So that's interesting. Let's hear one more here. By the way, in 15 minutes or so, I'm going to be jumping on KMBR with Greg Silver, sitting in for Greg Papa today. So we'll be cutting this a little bit short. But here is Orlovsky weighing in on Mike Evans. Let's hear a little bit of this.
He's going to be to Brock Purdy what Davante Adams was to Matthew Stafford. Everyone talked about Matthew Stafford and Davante Adams this past year and all the 1 yard or 2 yard touchdown passes. That's exactly what Mike Evans is going to be. There's one quarterback in the last 20 years in the NFL that has completed over 50% of the throws that he has thrown into the end zone. That's Brock Purdy. Now you add Mike Evans there. Dom, you know who's better than me. How many corners truly can you put out there by themselves at the 3 yard line and say, you go cover Mike Evans one-on-one? There aren't many. So you're going to get so many easy touchdown passes down in the red zone. And then you're going to get so many easy looks for Christian McCaffrey or George Kittle in that run game. This is an enormous addition.
Yeah. You saw that stat at the bottom of the screen. Niners receivers had 161 receptions this year, 24th in the NFL. 24th. Ouch. Yeah, they got to get more out of their receivers. My God, they're getting nothing out of their receivers. Niner Mafia, bring Alfred Collins in on an offensive play and let him run the ball up the middle and get creative. I don't know, man. You can take a chance of Alfred Collins blow out a knee. He's your ball carrier. I don't know. I mean, it's outside the box. I'll say that. It's outside the box. It's definitely thinking outside the box. Coach Yak had an interesting thing today. Let's see. I wanted to, before we get out of here, we'll put that up there. Take a look at what he was saying. So he's got some free agency questions. And he says the Niners need another wide receiver. Is Romeo Doubs still an option? Maybe Darnell Mooney. I'm not as big of a Darnell Mooney guy. Fans keep mentioning Brian Thomas Jr., but at what cost in draft picks? Brian Thomas Jr. would be way better than Darnell Mooney or Romeo Doubs. It's going to cost you a pick, but it probably is worth it. He says left guard needs to be filled. Elgington Jenkins just got cut by Green Bay. Joel Bitonio, the Browns, if he decides to play another year, or bring back Ben Barch and draft one. I definitely think they're going to bring back Ben Barch, and now you've got Lowe coming in who could probably play a little guard as well. But yeah, I think guard is definitely a spot that they'll draft. I think they'll draft a left guard. Then he says, does Renardo Green get traded? I was told that he's going to get traded. If so, now's the time. If the Niners want to sign Tariq Woolen, need another edge, Trey Hendrickson, Clavon Chason, Joey Bosa. My guess is Joey Bosa. I think Bosa, obviously he still wants to get paid, but he's not going to cost you as much as Hendrickson. Hendrickson's, I don't see how you can have Hendrickson and Bosa, Nick Bosa. So Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa, that might not be bad for a year. Might not be bad. Coach Yak says he'd also like to see them upgrade the safety room. So we shall see. I like this Miles Rouser, I believe his name is, for ASU. Probably a day 3 pick at safety. I love the kid Kilgore too. Jalen Kilgore plays for South Carolina. He would be a nice option for them as well. So, we'll see. We'll see. It's funny. People are reacting that the Niners reportedly have interest in bringing back Brian Robinson. They never use him. Yeah, they didn't use him very much. That was strange this year. They had him. He was there. There were whole games where he just didn't use. They didn't use him. By the way, Matt Barrows puts this out on X, and that is a list of the 49er players that are north of 30. And you've got Christian McCaffrey's 30, McKivitz is 30, Piñeiro's 30, Brandon Parker's 30, Eli Apple's 31, Demarcus Robinson 31, Saron Neal 32, Kittle 32, Evans 33, Brendel 34, Juszczyk 35, Trent 38, John Weeks 40. Well, it's actually, if you really think about it, Weeks and Neal and Piñeiro are special teamers. So I really don't care how old the special teamers are. Older special teamers, big deal. You got an old fullback, you got an old left tackle, you got an older center, now you got an older receiver, and you got an older tight end. So they need to get younger, but a lot of these guys that are 30 plus, who's really good on this team that's 30 plus? CMC, that's not a special teamer. CMC, Kittle. That's pretty much it. That's really good on the team. That's that. Now Evans. There aren't that many guys. It's still, even though it looks like there's a lot of guys, as far as the best players on the team, 30 I wouldn't say is old. 33 is old. 33, 34, 35. So who's 33 or older? Evans. So there's one guy. Brendel, Juszczyk, Trent, who they're probably going to part ways with, and Weeks, who's your long snapper. I don't care if he's 140, let alone 40. So yeah, it looks like they've got a lot of age there, but it's really not. It's really not, because there aren't that many of their core players that are really older. All right, that's going to do it for us. I'm going to jump over to the radio. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Thanks to Sleeper. Sleeper, if you're already on Sleeper for fantasy, they've got this brand new thing called Team Picks. It's right there waiting for you. If you're new, Sleeper continues to be an all-in-one platform for following your teams and staying connected to the action. So thanks to Sleeper for being a proud sponsor of the Krug Show. Also, thanks to our spring training sponsors, Alomar Marina. That's right. Check them out You can dine while you sit on the Sacramento and float on the Sacramento River while you dine, have breakfast or lunch at Sacramento sports fans game day destination, Alomar Marina, 5999 Garden Highway. Open Wednesday through Saturday, 11 to 7, Sunday, 9 to 4. AlomarMarina.net on the web. Also, check out Novato Chevrolet. Go see my guy, David Corral. He's the man to go see there. Tell him that Krug sent you. Thanks to them, and thanks to Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles as well. And thanks to you guys for supporting the Krug Show. Join me right now. I am headed over to the radio. We have this one from Carson. He says, forget the D-line. We need to focus on our secondary. Demo is mid. Green doesn't make plays. Mustafa and Siegel are backups. Brown is slow. And Reek gets toasted. Wow, you're already anti-Reek. It's not even there. All right, there you go. All right, join me over on the radio at 10 o'clock. I'll be sitting next to Greg Silver, chopping it up, talking a lot of Niners, I'm sure. Until then, peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared.